I want to recognize this morning a couple of things. I want to really, as Justin's saying about it, I want to sort of place in the tradition of God's children the role of lament, to legitimize it, to give it its place, to recognize the centrality of it for God's children. But then to recognize that lament not as something to be avoided at all costs, because one wonders, gosh, if I'm in the position to be lamenting, my life must be in a really hard place, and so I should avoid the lament. But for us to accept it and to say, I don't want to avoid it at all costs, but I want to embrace it. And I want to embrace it for me personally, but I want to embrace lament also for the good of the world that I find myself in. I think it's a God-given gift to the world through us. And so if you have your Bibles, I want to just jump right in. It's Psalm 13 this morning is where we're going to be. It's a Psalm of David, and it's brief, and it's poetically beautiful. It's gritty, and it invites brutal honesty. And so I feel like that's a really great way to just sort of start a Monday morning. It says this: "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer, Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death, and my enemy will say I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me." Psalms of lament like this serve many purposes. They serve to mirror our own heart to us, first and foremost, right off the top. They're sort of God legitimizing that we are emotional beings and that we should process our emotional lives. But they also tell us how to live in a broken world. They give us recourse when there is no outlet. Psalms of lament, they tell us what to do when we are cornered by pain and grief that is so blinding that we feel like we're going to explode. When the world is not logical or propositional, lament tells us what to do, how to act, and what to say. And for that, lament is a huge gift, and we shouldn't just avoid it. I've been a parent for 12 years now. In May, my daughter's going to be 12, my oldest. And I'll be honest, I've been spending most of my 12 years as a dad sort of setting up padded walls around my kids, trying to help them avoid the difficulty and the pain of this broken and fallen world. I know it's impossible philosophically, but it's kind of what I default to. And then we have a week like we had last week, when the world sort of pushes its way into the safety of our house with its brokenness. In my city, I live in Whittier, just one city over. We're processing the loss of our first fallen police officer since 1979. And Whittier is a big town, but it really feels like a small town in a lot of ways. One of my friends is a cop on the force, and he knew Officer Keith Boyer, and he's personally struggling. And so he's processing with me. He's in our home. He's talking about what he's experiencing. And so my kids are feeling all of this brokenness right in our living room. And my kids have about 1,000 questions. Keith Boyer was just responding to a routine traffic accident caused by an erratic driver. He approached the car and was killed by a man who 1 hour earlier had killed his cousin and stolen his car, had crashed it, and was pursuing what they call suicide by cop. That is, I'm going to take out as many people as I can, and I'll probably get killed along the way. And in this case, the guy who killed Officer Boyer was shot but not killed, so he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. My son, who's 9, if you know Enneagram, he's a 5, which means he is the observer. He's always watching. He's always formulating a question. And he's putting the pieces together, and he's noticing cops and shooting. And he says, yeah, but Dad, don't cops kill people too? Well, where do I begin to describe to a 9-year-old boy all the things that I would have to explain to really get into that issue? He asks me, and he's trying to make sense. I'm grasping for how to talk to him about the nuance. I realize that there are systems in our country that were built and reinforced over time, and these systems are bigger than any one cop or criminal or perceived criminal and the interaction that they have. I think about how the murder of a cop at the site of a traffic collision is not going to make it easier for police officers in their already hard job to be less guarded, less defensive, less ready to decide who looks suspicious and why. My heart is spiraling in sadness about the brokenness of this world. I stumble through and I try to tell him propositionally, well, there's two sides of every story, and there are good cops and there's bad cops and there are bad criminals, and everybody has an equal opportunity to make good or bad decisions. And he's just staring at me with a quizzical look on his face, trying to figure out how to file this propositional knowledge that I'm feeding him. You see, these issues cannot be processed by proposition or logic. They don't hit home for my 9-year-old son, and his face is honest, and it's telling me the truth about that. At some point, we realize I cannot protect my son from the ugly, complex realities of this broken and unsafe, incredibly fallen world. And what do I feel most? I feel heartbroken about it. I feel sad about that. I realize instead of leading with propositional truth, I have to lead with my sadness and lament. There's a book that some of you may recognize from your childhood. It's called We're Going on a Bear Hunt. Who is familiar with this book? Yeah, no, it's an amazing book. I didn't know about it until I was a dad. The story goes like this. There's a family who sets out on a bear hunt, and they quickly come to a series of obstacles, and they correctly recognize that there is no way around this obstacle. And so with each obstacle, they realize and say this to themselves: we can't go over it, we can't go under it, oh no, we've got to go through it. Isn't this deeply and intuitively true? Oftentimes, propositional logic is actually the thing that says, do not go through it. That would be the crazy thing to do. But life requires more than propositional logic at times, doesn't it? Star Trek didn't just have Spock. It had Bones, and it had Kirk. Ethos, pathos, and logos. There are times when logic and reason is exactly what you need. And then at other times, logic will not be enough. When it comes to Psalm 13, scholars have tried over the years to point to an event that gave rise to this Psalm of David, but they cannot place it. At best, they're just guessing. And so what you're left with the Psalm 13 is David, the prophet king, seeking to hear the word of the Lord on behalf of his people. And what do we discover? We discover God inviting them to process the emotions of their heart as honestly as they can. And they're doing this on their way to propositional truth. Eventually they get there, but first they're given the green light. Go ahead, process as you will. And so here we have the psalm. It's broken into 3 sections, as you can see. There's anxiety first in 1 and 2. There's just straight up processing. How long have you been ignoring me? I'm so anxious about this. Then through 3 and 4, he just starts crying out, Lord, would you rescue me? And only after he gives himself to both of those movements, then he greenlights the faith. He greenlights the propositional reality that a follower of God should have faith in God. But he doesn't get there first. He doesn't try to act like he's there first. Oftentimes, we seek to move to faith without fully respecting the first 2 movements, which is the same as trying to go over it or under it. But David encourages us that we've got to go through it. Psalm 13 would grant and acknowledge that there are important political positions to land on in difficult current events like the nature of injustice and race and police shootings and shootings of officers, but that we are not really prepared if we have not first let the pain of these realities pass through us. You can have the right answers, but they won't make sense until you mourn for it. Let the pain pass through you. We can have the right answers, but we won't make sense until we mourn. The refugee crisis, I think, is a good example of this. If we can politicize it, we think, if we can have a position on it, if we can keep our distance from it by having it be out there, not here, then we don't have to feel sad about the fact that families are being torn apart. that whole cultures and subcultures are being swallowed whole. See, whatever your political view on something like refugees, that's fine. Listen, it is a complex issue. It defies simple answers. We have to be human, though, first, and to let it move through us, to observe the appropriate rites of lament. The world needs, from God's people, the kindness of their lament. And so when my son asks me about issues between black community and law enforcement, and who is right and who is wrong, I start with the language of lament rather than propositional statement making. We start with the reality that there are dead bodies in the street, whether they are blue lives or whether they are black lives. I've got to teach him this. Because if I skip the expression of my anxiety and fear, and if I ignore the part where I'm crying out to God for rescue, my faith will be shallow when the world needs me and my son to have the kind of faith that isn't afraid to plumb the deepest depths of this fallen world. Lament is both a mirror to us about our emotions, but it also helps us know how to orient ourselves in the world with people who have very different opinions than us. Some say that pain, the kind of pain that we need to lament, some say it comes in waves, and I think that this is appropriate. When I was a child, we grew up in Torrance, which is right by like Hermosa, Redondo, and Manhattan Beach. My mom had grown up in Manhattan Beach, and she was an expert in the waves. She knew how to sort of get me out there into the waves, even though the waves were the scariest thing in the world I could imagine. She showed me that the terrifying wall of water is indeed scary, but it's also the kind of thing that you cannot run from. When a wave is forming, it sucks up all the water around you, pulling everything else into it. And so my mom showed me how to give into it, to stop running from that fear, to turn, to face it, and then to do the unthinkable, to run toward the wave, inviting it to crash over me. And what I realized was that the wave does its worst to me if it catches me as I'm running away. But if I run toward it and I dive into it, it will pass over me and release me. And so I want to carve out some brief time for us to do exactly that, to run to the waves today of those things that we're afraid of, the things that bring us heartache, the places of pain in our life. And I really think that Psalm 13 kind of gives us an outline about how we would approach this and how we would do it. So first, where are there emotional knots for you that just simply refuse to be intellectually untied? Where are there just big questions about you or people in your life or relationships that you have? Maybe you've experienced the death of a loved one and you're still reeling. Maybe you have questions about yourself. Maybe you have some crushing shame or anxiety that you can't seem to get out from under. Maybe you're the child of divorce and you feel like you probably should have adjusted yet, but you still have some major questions that were just never answered for you. Maybe your heart has been broken and there's no amount of control that you can exert into that situation that can make it get better or go away. The first movement of Psalm 13 is to just simply do this, is to articulate our anxiety about that. So I would just ask right now that you just close your eyes. Personally, for you, where is there some element of pain, sadness, anxiety? Where is there something that for you, you are just sad about? How long, O Lord? How long will you forget me? How long will you hide your face from me? If there's anxiety, just cry out to the Lord. Share it. We're following the movement of Psalm 13. The second movement would be to cry out and to ask God specifically, would you please rescue me? Take a moment and ask God just to rescue you. Answer me, Lord, David says. Give light to my eyes. In these first two movements, be as honest as you possibly can. You don't see God asking his people to hold back or to edit. Engage the process as honestly as possible. The third movement of Psalm 13. Now we move. Even if it's aspirational, now we move to an articulation of faith. Lord, I trust you. With that same thing in mind, move there in prayer. Even if it's hard to trust him. Lord God, I trust you. Lord, you're faithful. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. You know, there's a lot to process for us personally. Or we could go on and on with Lent and processing our pain in this season. Lament is a process for us, but also, I said earlier, lament is something that helps us position ourselves right in the world. The final movement today is lament on behalf of someone else. This is territory we're about to go where propositional truth may not allow us to go because we can still lament with someone, even if we disagree with them. Remember the reality of blue lives and black lives. There's polarization, but lament simply exists because there's death and because there's pain. We can do that. We can do that even where there's disagreement. Part of the role of lament is to tell us how to orient ourselves in this world with the people who actually hold very different views from us. We may propositionally disagree with drug use or the toll that it takes on a family and on a body, but we're going to push pause on that. And we're just going to be sad with the people who are sad about that issue. And so what I want us to do is to consider how polarized this world is right now. Think of someone with whom you disagree vehemently. Identify that positional difference. Name it for yourself. And then set it aside. Is there something about their pain that you can understand, that you can enter into? From their point of view, can you recognize how they would feel pain? How they'd feel confusion? And so in prayer, notice that there are all these philosophical differences, but we're going to set those sort of polarizing political views to the side for a moment and more enter into the things that we can all agree we can be sad about. In prayer, as if you're them, articulate their anxiety in prayer, just like David asked us to. So just close your eyes, and we're gonna do this on behalf of the other. Can you articulate, as if you're someone else, what their pain might be? Remove your propositional disagreement with them and find the human reality. As if you're them, can you imagine saying, "How long, O Lord?" Can you imagine them saying, "Will you forget me forever?" You see, God gave us this ability to lament. And this is a place where lament can actually float around our political differences. And we can walk with people who we are so different from. Doors can be open. Lament is no small thing. It's not weakness. There's great power in this way, in lament. Can you, as if you were them, cry out to God? Can you imagine the kind of thing they'd say if they were asking God to rescue them? Can you feel what they must be feeling?
Biola University prepares Christians to think biblically about everything, from science to business to education and the arts. Learn more at biola.edu.